It's time to shake out your money-making truth. You're listening to Soul Wisdom Abundance with Jennifer Bloom, creating wealth from spiritual health on transformationtalkradio.com. Have you ever wondered why some people work really hard for their money while others live lives of joy and abundance with seemingly little effort? You are about to learn powerful, tangible steps to shifting your mindset and connecting to your flow of money and abundance. Jennifer teaches you to connect to who you are at a soul level and how to use that connection to create a personal and specific relationship with money. Learn how money is a powerful tool to achieve your desires and your desires to then serve the world. So shake out your money-making truth right now. Soul Wisdom Abundance with Jennifer Bloom.
Hello and welcome, everyone. I am Jennifer Bloom, host of Soul Wisdom Abundance, Create Wealth Through Spiritual Health. And I'm utterly delighted to be sharing space with you, whether it's digitally or whether you can actually see me. It's fun to be sharing conversational space. So just briefly, this podcast is all about creating money, creating abundance, wealth creation in new ways that don't require us to hustle and work 80 hours and, get bloodied knuckles as we, move through our time together. That's how we were taught how to do it. And there's nothing wrong with being in action. There's nothing wrong with doing work. That's all part of the puzzle. But the worry and the fear and the anxiety and the struggle, that's the part that I really am interested in creating new conversation around. And so what I think of as the foundation to that is understanding that we are actually in relationship with money. That us as the human being are in relationship with both the divine and the energy of money in what I call the soul money relationship. And when we learn how to step up and be the leader of that relationship, when we hold ourselves in that relationship in a really strong way, now we're working with money in a much more conscious way. We aren't working out of our old patterns, our fears, all of that. We are making decisions in a really clear, conscious space. And that changes the whole game because you're able to have money come in exchange for something that is less intrusive, less hard. That's not really great grammar, but we'll just leave it. We'll leave it at that for today. Okay. So if you're interested in learning more about that soul money relationship, I'm going to invite you to come to my website, take the soul money relationship quiz. That is going to help you understand a little bit more about each of the different aspects, find out which one of those aspects of your relationship with money could use a little extra love, a little extra connection, and I'll give you an exercise to do that. All right. So, all right, let's get into what we're going to talk about today because I'm super excited. It's going to be a great conversation. And I have one more little introductory piece to say, and that is, so let's take this aspect of our soul money relationship that is our relationship with ourself. When we are allowing ourselves to stand strongly in connection with who we are, I term it as, I describe it as being in connection with who we are at a soul level. You can think about it in whatever language feels right to you. But when we're able to do that, we are able to be strong to say, here I am, I have something to say, I'm willing to be seen, I'm willing to be heard, and I'm willing to receive money in exchange for who I am. And there's a lot of trust that goes into that. And another word that we could use for that is confidence, right? To have the confidence to say that, yes, I am a singular strand of the divine. I have a message and a purpose that is worthy of other people hearing and participating in. All right, well, that's great. Then the question becomes how? How do I get that confidence? How do I get that trust? And for that question, I have brought in Jess Critchlow, who is an expert in all things confidence, and I will let her share a little bit about her background in a moment. But we are going to, you use the word, radical confidence for leaders and other people on their team to reach goals. So, wow, you are the person to have this conversation with. Welcome, Jess. I am glad you're here.
Oh my gosh, Jennifer, I am so grateful you let me come play in your sandbox with you today because you talk about all the stuff that I love it's not my area of expertise. I dabble in the more woo side of things. Like I practice things, I don't teach it as much. So whenever I get the chance to be with a teacher of it, I'm like, yes, what do you need? Tell me what I can do to come play with you. So I'm so grateful to be here.
Oh, lovely. So I've been looking forward to this conversation. So can you share a little bit about your background and why confidence matters to you? Like, let's just start there.
Oh my gosh, what a big question. In an attempt to not bore everyone, I'll give you the truncated version and then we can, dig in where we want. Yeah. So I have a background in being in like big corporate, capital B, capital C. I had a very successful career in corporate. Right from the get-go, I started in HR, got into leadership development, learning and development, which is sort of training, organizational structure, that kind of stuff. And I got a lot of comments through the first sort of 5 years of my career, which is like, you're so confident for your age. You're so confident. You're such a wonderkin. You're so confident. And I couldn't wrap my head around that because I was like, I am a sweaty, anxious, feel like I'm going to throw up constantly mess. Like, what are you talking about? So I decided, as you do when you're in big corporate, capital B, capital C, I was like, I know what the solution is. I need a promotion. So I was like, great, that will solve all my confidence problems. I just need a promotion. So I hired a coach. I sort of started learning more about personal development. I got the promotion, and shockingly to none of your listeners, that didn't solve any of my confidence problems.
What do you mean, putting a new title after your name didn't make that internal change? Wow, shocker, yes.
Doubled down on my imposter syndrome. So I was like, ruh-roh. So that sparked the dive down the rabbit hole. Yeah. You name a learning or healing modality, I can pretty much guarantee I have sampled it in some place to just like crack this nut open because I didn't understand. I knew I was good at my job. I saw the performance reviews, and yet sitting in my performance review, I would argue with my manager. She'd say, you're above expectations. I'm like, nope, no way. Girlfriend, let me tell you why I suck. She's like, no, like what, this is weird. So I had to dig in and understand, why is my outside not matching my inside? And what can I do about it? So that started my dive into the confidence rabbit hole, because on one hand I was successful. So yay. But it was painful and like little, small p painful. There are worse problems in the world than being good at your job and not feeling good at your job, of course, right? But it was hard. I'd go into this office day after day, feel like a fraud, day after day, feel like an imposter, feel like I was never doing enough, like I could never really figure it out. So I had to dive in, because I was like, I can't do this. Is this what I'm doing until I retire in 40 years? Just feeling like this? I'm not doing this. So that was what kicked it all off for me.
Swimming in the pain, someday maybe we'll figure out how to learn without having to swim in the pain first. But
if you crack that secret, Jennifer, you got to let me in on that.
Yeah, I'll put you on the list. Yeah, I'll put you on the list. Okay, so as you kind of were beginning to peel back this difference, right? Okay, so here I am on the outside and here I am on the inside. As you started to peel back those layers and begin to find some way for one to match the other, what was some of the first steps? What was one of the first ahas that helped you begin to integrate the inner and the outer?
Okay. This was less of an aha and more of like a slow, drawn out understanding, but this was the biggest shift for me. And so we'll start here, which is, I always believed that confidence was a feeling, right? So the idea that I would be about to go on stage to speak and feel nervous, to me, my brain interpreted that as, I'm not confident, I'm not ready, because I have a little bit of throw up in my back of my mouth because I'm sweating like uncontrollably. Therefore, I'm not confident. Yeah. And what I learned after a ridiculous amount of time and energy and money on personal development and professional development is mutually exclusive things. You can be sweaty, heart racing, nervous at AF, and still be confident. When we define confident as knowing what you can do and taking action as a result, You get to be sweating buckets and still be confident. You get to be pacing backstage thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to throw up. And still be confident.
So say your definition. I'm sorry. Now I just talked right over. I'm going to ask you to repeat it. And I was talked right over as you repeated it. So say it again. Knowing what you need to know.
So knowing what you can do, having deep self-awareness. To my corporate friends, I usually say, know what you can do, know your skills. To you guys, I will say deep inner knowing, understanding what a yes feels like in your body, understanding what a no feels like in your body, being aligned, deep inner knowing. So knowing what you can do. And the part that everyone goes, cool, that sounds great. And then I'm like, and taking action. They're like, oh, I don't like that one as much. Yeah. But it's the 1-2 punch of confidence. You have deep knowing and you're doing something about it. If you know that you are clairvoyant and you never do anything with that, guess what? That doesn't count as confidence. Even though you might have the inner knowledge, if you're not doing something with that ability, it doesn't get to count. You got work to do, baby.
Yeah, does that make sense? It does. Yeah, absolutely. Because then it's neck up, right? It's sort of this cerebral sense of, oh yeah, this is who I am. And yeah, I'm not going to do anything. Right. I'm here in my bubble.
I'm not going to take risk.
Right. Exactly.
I'm not going to be vulnerable with it.
Yeah. And it's that process of knowing it. And then somehow we bring it down into our bodies and we begin to trust it, to know it in a new way. If we never take, I think, and those action steps allow us to know it in a new way, to prove to ourselves, yeah, I do know something. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Jess that was in capital B and capital C. So what didn't she know about herself?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's get my therapist notes out before on this topic. I think one of the biggest shifts that certainly came more at the beginning of like unpicking all of this was just how much I believed, and if it's true for me, I know it's true for other people, that there was one way of doing it, one way of being confident. And I worked with engineers and software developers for most of my career. So the way of being confident is you show up with deep technical knowledge. You don't put your opinion in. You don't use your intuition. You don't check in with your body. You check in with what the research paper said. And let's be clear, I love research. I love science too. But it was one way of showing up as a technical expert. And that is what confidence looked like. And anything outside of that was weird or not confidence. And so hence the doubling down on the imposter syndrome, because I was regularly showing up in a way that felt weird for me, technically successful, technically high performance, quote unquote, but it didn't feel good. But that's what I believed confidence was. It was this exact play that you do. You do this character. You're the professor character.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. And so, right. And if that idea then also, because I think we look to other people, right? We look to the people who are standing on stage or out there in some way, shape, or form, maybe not a literal stage, but who are really out there doing their thing. And we think, oh, that's who I have to be. That I have to be who I'm imagining them to be in order for me to have enough confidence and trust in who I think I am to step out there. And of course, we tell so many stories about who we think somebody is. Brene Brown is one of my heroes because she is so authentic about, I might be showing up. I might have this great big business. I might have all of this, but you know what? I'm quaking in my boots, people. Right.
Yeah. Right. There's something about, it's so funny. I was talking to my coach about Brene Brown yesterday. There's something just so compelling about someone, well, in Brene's words, owning their story. Right. And not like, one thing I noticed about Brene Brown and a lot of the sort of anecdotes she tells to illustrate her points is her stories aren't that dramatic. You know what I mean? They're not like, I was on a plane and then it crashed into the ocean and then there was a pirate and then there was, which amazing if that's your story, by the way. You got a story about that. That's awesome. And I want in. But sometimes we make up that if we're not extraordinary, then it doesn't count. Brittany's stories are like, I was going for a swim with my husband, or I didn't get the cheerleading squad position in high school. Like, these are not, we can see ourselves in them and they're meaningful, but they don't have to be extraordinary to be meaningful. And that's another lesson that I'm still learning, by the way. But, you know, that we just make up that if I don't have this huge life-changing arc, then like, wow, no one really wants my story of like that time I got lost driving to my grandma's. Like we just, we get a bit confused, don't we?
We do. Yeah, we absolutely do. We absolutely do. Okay. So let's fast forward to this. So we have this knowing of ourselves.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit, because I know one of the things that you've created are confidence archetypes. So I'm guessing they're going to play into the answer to this question, but how do you suggest that people, you know, again, this isn't just a one-time flip the switch kind of a process, obviously, but how do you suggest that people have a deeper sense of self-awareness so that there's an opportunity to step into a place of trust?
Oh my God, such a good question. Okay. Work with Jennifer or I. No, but as an aside.
Well, I mean, sometimes it takes somebody on the outside, right?
And it does. It really does. Yeah.
And I think that it's, side note, this isn't a sales job, but I have a coach. I've had plenty of coaches, right? And you too, right? And it's not the pyramid scheme of coaching here, but sometimes, right? Sometimes you need somebody on the outside to help you be able to take the shell off and let you really see what's going on. All right.
That's right.
And then there's tools also. We each have tools in our respective tool belts to help. So tell us a little bit about yours.
Of course. Yeah. And on that note, by the way, I am very aware that being able to hire a coach and even a therapist can be a point of privilege. There is still places to lean on others, masterminds, just getting your friends that you trust, not friends that you just happen to be friends with since you were kids, but friends that you feel very connected with. Have like a weekly gals club or a moon circle, a monthly women's circle. Like, there are ways to create these opportunities, even if the budget doesn't necessarily allow for paid support. There are other, maybe not quite as impactful, but still great opportunities to lean on others. The one side note, I swear I'm going to answer your question, but I have to
absolutely. We'll get there.
Feedback.
We'll get there. Yeah.
I have to side note. Yeah. Feedback is another huge one that I need everyone to just listen to me right now. Feedback will never tell you anything about you. It will only ever tell you someone else's experience. That doesn't mean it's useless data, by the way. It's very useful data. We just sometimes get a bit confused. So we'll get, and I'm the same. Like, I've done a lot of work on this and I'm the same. We hear the piece of feedback of, your training was really long-winded and I didn't really get it. And we take that as, my training was long-winded and people didn't get it. That's not actually the piece of data you got. The data you got was this person's experience of it. So was it long-winded? Maybe. It's worth checking that out. Did you not set expectations with that person about the length? Did they think it was a 10-minute live and it's a 90-minute workshop, right? Were they even the right audience? Were they like, I don't know what this gobbledygook is. I don't know what she's talking about. Well, they're not your person. So we just have to be very careful that we collect the data, but then we decide what to do with it. It's not objective truth. It never will be, but we can play with it.
Yes. And whether that is coming from a coach or whether that's coming from a friend, from your parents, from your, anything, sibling, anything, you are the master of the ship. And everything else somebody's saying is coming through their perspective. And so because it's this dance that we do between leaning on other people, leaning on other data, leaning into something and taking on only really what fits, which is why I tend to want to lean on that divine connection, lean on that soul level connection, because that's never going to lie to you. That's
Yeah.
truth with a capital T. And of course that takes practice, because it's not about religion. It's more in the spiritual tradition, right? But when we learn at that level about ourselves, that's different kinds of data. So
yeah, for sure. And I won't keep going on about this, but to your point, positive praise too. For the first 8 years of my career, I thought I depended on it like a lifeline because I didn't have my own inner knowing, right? But praise is also just someone else's experience. It's not to do with you at all. Doesn't mean it doesn't feel good. Heck yes, it feels good. I love a kudos. Like, you want to send me a testimonial, baby? I love it, right? Like, it feels good.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just not objective truth. It's someone else's experience. And we do have to be mindful that we divorce ourselves from it. Just that smidge. It can feel good. Like, I remember a corporate lawyer I was working with once was like, you have you think like a lawyer. You should go to law school. And I was like, okay. So then I spent like a month looking at my LSATs, and I don't want to be a lawyer. I'd be a terrible lawyer. But I was like, oh, okay. I guess I should be a lawyer. Like, I mean, anyways. Be mindful.
Well, right. Because you can also, to your point about praise, so my mother loves coffee. She loves it to the point where we would joke about her needing it like an IV. She'd take a nap, she'd have her coffee cup on her, you try to take it away from her, she had a death grip on it, right? So that's the image that I have in my head as I'm thinking about praise. Some of us use it, we need it intravenously. It's a good day if somebody said something positive. It's a bad day if somebody is reflecting something that doesn't feel so good. And we use that to monitor how we feel about ourselves. That it just is that's just a recipe for disaster. To need one or to constantly be hearing and taking in and digesting the other. So let's circle back. This is really important.
We'll come back around. Nail me down.
So now we know, right? This is another reason why it's important to have deeper self-awareness. So tell me about the kind of tools that you use to help people create that deeper self-awareness.
Okay, well, some are practices I'm not giving you any rocket science. None of this is stuff you haven't heard of, but I will reiterate that it's also useful for building this self-awareness and this confidence muscle: mindfulness, meditation, guided visualizations, anything that can not quiet your mind, because personally, my mind is never quiet, but allow you to practice being the observer of the busyness instead of immersed in the busyness. That will always move you forward in the confidence muscle, the confidence practice. So mindfulness, guided visualizations, anything that can allow you to just like step out of the busyness and watch the busyness. Always step one. If you ignore everything else I say, have a mindfulness practice, 5 minutes a day. Even that will help. So that's one. Two, my favorite one, hence why I have my own version of it, is personality assessments. MBTI, that's the one I'm certified in. That's actually the springboard for my confidence archetypes quiz, Belbin, FiroB. Oh my God, you name a personality assessment and I'll tell you to go and do it. But what I want you to be, the way to use it in this type of building this type of muscle is to use it to spark your curiosity. So anyone who downloads one of my confidence reports, the first thing I say is, you can read this and think it's total garbage. I'm fine with that. That's totally fine. As long as you're being curious. Yeah. When do I do that? When do I act that way? Ooh, that doesn't sound like me. I wonder what my spouse would say about that. You have to be curious about it. It's not fact. It's not garbage. You have to be curious. Same with all of the psychological assessments, even the ones that are like true scientifically validity, reliability. I'm like trying to dust off my psychology degree here, right? Curious, just be curious about them. That's where you'll start to find progress when it comes to personality assessments, is when you examine it. Like, yeah, when do I show up like that? So things like, I always say, look, you love astrology. Perfect. Use that then. When do you show up as a Libra? When do you show up as a Sagittarius rising moon? Like rising sign. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Like, lean into it and get curious. Don't just go, oh, I guess oh, I guess I'm a manifesting generator. Okay. No, like examine.
Right. And what does that mean for you? What's your truth in it? What is your truth in it? It's funny because astrology has been something that, well, I have had arguments with astrology for a very long time because I'm like, how can I be written in the stars? Give me a break. That, and the reason I think why it bothered me so much was because people would say, well, I have blah, 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 which means this. So therefore I can't do this, or this is why this is always creating pain for me. It's this problem, or it's this part. And, I just felt like it was so inflexible. And now I have come I have a brand new relationship with astrology. There's another couple of people who have been able to like bring it to life for me. Like, here's what a pattern, these are the patterns you might find. And then I'm able to say, oh, yes, I can see myself there, but it's not like this dire life sentence, right?
Black or white, baby, this or that.
I can bring it to life. Yeah. So just, can you share about your confidence archetypes?
Of course. Yeah. So it's a really quick, fun quiz. And there's 9 different types. And essentially, let me be very clear and go on record. We all have all the archetypes. There is no, like, I hear people talk about archetypes sometimes with like, I am a sage, I am a mystic, I am an artist. Like, no. That's just the one that is your home base that you're most comfortable operating from. You have all of them because you're a human with a human experience and human DNA and a human brain. You have all the archetypes in you. Some are just going to be your home base. And that's true of MBTI. We all have all of them. So what this quiz allows you to do, though, is get just a little bit more dialed into which one is my comfort zone, and comfort zone in a good way, not a bad way, which is like your foundation is probably the better way to say it, where when you behave in that way, you can really lean in, you can like show your expertise in a way that's fun and joyful for you rather than like putting on a show or imposter syndrome or acting as if. And so there's 9 different types, and they really are just, again, that way to scratch the surface, to get curious. Like, okay, if you're a sage type, teaching is where you will get your confidence. So can you teach? Like, don't worry about making a reel where you dance around to Beyonce. If you're into that, go for it. But you don't have to do that. Just teach. And that will feel really good. If you're a jester type, be silly. You don't have to be serious and quote journal entries all the time. You can be silly and be playful and speak truth to power in a way that they'll hear because you're being silly. Artists create things. Warriors fight causes for other people. Rebels go against the grain, right? We all have all of that. But which one feels like a great foundation to grow from? That's where the archetype report will really help you.
I love that. Because as you're speaking, what I'm feeling is if I get curious and I recognize myself in that, it's a like permission to claim it.
Yeah, I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
I can claim this as me, as opposed to, oh, okay, I'm a sage. I am. My home base is sage, to use your use your language, right? So that gives me permission to rest into, I love to teach. So don't make myself have to be like somebody else who is dancing around on reels to Beyonce, because that will honestly never be me.
That's your thing. Go for it, baby. But just don't pretend it's your thing.
Exactly. It gives me permission to not have to do that and look like an absolute fool. Anywho, all right. Fantastic conversation. Well, I tell you what, this is going to be a great place for us to take a short break, and then we're going to continue the conversation by giving some additional information for the listeners about how to integrate all of this. So looking forward to that. So let's go ahead and take that short break. You're listening to Soul Wisdom Abundance, and I am your host, Jennifer Bloom. I will be back with Jess in just a moment. Welcome back to Soul Wisdom Abundance. I'm Jennifer Bloom, and I'm here with my guest, Jess Critchlow, who has been giving us a lot of fun ways to think about confidence, ways to build confidence, all kinds of really yummy things. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and share some exercises, information to integrate this information. Did that sound like a teacher? That sounded like a teacher. I'm so sorry.
Lean into that sage, baby. I love it. It's good.
Oh, I don't know. All right, but before we do that, can you share with our listeners the best way for them to get in touch with you? Of course, we've got the show notes that has, all your details, but what if there was one way for somebody to get in touch with you, or if you have something you want to highlight about something you want to offer to the listeners, will you share that?
Yes. Okay. So I'm always on Instagram, arguably too much. So working on that. Light Up Work. So I'm over there sharing too many pictures of my kids in my stories. Sorry, mompreneur life. What are you going to do? And always, doing giveaways and workshops and stuff over there. And for your listeners, I do want to offer a 30-minute session specifically about their confidence archetype report and how to apply that more in their business. So that's not something I normally give away, but for your listeners, really digging into the report itself and coaching them around how they can bring that even more to their work and to their business.
Super.
And they can find me, like I say, they can message me on Instagram. That's the best way to just, quote your show. So I found you on Jennifer Bloom Show, or they can always go to my website and message me there as well.
Okay, beautiful. Well, that's fun. Good chance to dig in, right?
It's such fun. I just love this stuff.
I could live in personality assessments all the time. You name it, I have done it. Okay, well, that actually leads really nicely into what I want to offer. So in the work that I do, as far as helping create confidence, I use a paradigm called soul language, and soul language puts tangibility to soul. That's the whole point of it. So within this paradigm, what we understand is that there are 107 different voices of soul. And what I love what you said, Jess, about your archetypes is that, yes, we have access to all of those voices. But we chose, when we came to the planet, we chose 3 of those languages to be a piece of our soul. We have a language that supports us in our mission, one in the skills and tools, how we're going to do that mission, and then our soulful personality. So who we are when we're really in that connected state. And the beauty about the way these paradigms are, or the way these languages are presented, is you get to understand things that you might be noticing about yourself when you are connected, and things you might be noticing about yourself when you're disconnected. Again, this is a place to be curious. Great word. Isn't that interesting? I seem to be a little bit over here and a little bit over here, which makes complete sense. We're never always, there's 2 words you're not ever supposed to use, right? We're never always connected. And that's okay. But what I love about it is that I used to, the places where you could call it your shadow side, you can call it your disconnected side, whatever language works for you when you're out of connection. There were things that are examples of that, where I used to say, oh, that's what's wrong with me. That's why I'm never getting to where I need to go. There's something really wrong with me. There's some, like this dark mark on my soul. Not to be dramatic about it or anything, but I've got Scorpio in my chart, so I get to be dramatic. So what I would like to do is I would like to offer you one of your languages. And the way that I do that is to make a one-time connection to your soul, which I did before the show, and I had permission. I don't ever do it without permission. And I test. And so I asked your soul which category, first of all. And so we're going to talk about your soulful personality. And then I muscle tested to see which one of the 107 is yours. So what I'd love to do, I'm going to share the description of it. And I want to share what you might notice if you're connected and what you might notice if you're disconnected. And I'd love for you to sort of listen to it as a whole. Remember, we're putting language to the ineffable, right? So like you might, right? So kind of listen to it as a whole. And then I'm curious, what resonates, what doesn't, whatever. Okay. So ready?
I'm so excited.
All right. So for you, your soulful personality is captain. You prefer to be the head of an influential group, to be in charge. As a superintendent of this group, you are the acting authority to ensure that the policies and regulations are enforced. Each member of this group, including the captain, is acting to complete a common task, goal, or mission. You do not feel satisfied with any other position and will work toward achieving the highest rank in your area of expertise. So this is all about leadership, power, and destiny. Okay. So if you are in connection with this language, things you're going to notice: commanding your group and yourself with an even hand, providing motivation for the group and yourself, knowing the procedures and strategies that will produce the best results with the intention of the greatest good of all, soliciting through goodwill and divine guidance the support of resources and people to assist with the completion of the common task, goal, or mission, and to support your rise to power. Wow, there's a lot of these. So I'm gonna leave it there. Actually, accepting your power and utilizing it with divine guidance, having compassion for yourself. And if you are disconnected, things you might notice: expressing impatience for and intolerance, of yourself or others, living in fear about making decisions, being a perfectionist, demanding impossible standards for yourself or others, trying to control, living in fear of losing control, feeling what others think, trying to people please in order to receive respect. So tell me how that lands.
Ooh. Oh, there's a few. Essentially, it felt very aligned. Two things, I guess, questions that
Yes,
I have.
of course.
I want to get your.
Yeah.
Let's make it all about me. Why not? So on the shadow side, because that's what we always do. Like everything you said about like when you're in alignment, I'm like, yeah, that all sounds great. Yay. And then I was like, oh, the shadow side. People pleasing, something I've been working on since really 15 years now. So yep, get it. And part of that's our conditioning in our culture, but there's something about it that is like, yeah, it's deep. So that very much resonates. And I am always at my worst when I am not vigilant with that. And I don't even mean like my performance isn't good, whatever that means. Like, I mean, I'm not who I know I'm meant to be. So that very much resonates. Yeah. The control thing I have a question about.
You bet.
So I quit drinking maybe 2 years ago now. And not, by the way, like a huge dramatic story. I was just like, I had a beer yesterday and I feel kind of fuzzy. I don't think I'm gonna drink anymore. So like I don't have a big exciting story there. It's not for me. But part of it is I don't like the feeling of not being in control when I have had too many drinks. So on one hand, that feels really healthy to me, not drinking, that is. But I'm just curious if you have any thoughts around that.
Control is a tricky word, isn't it? Because on the one hand, the idea of being out of control, right, where you have something that is really within you that is causing you to not be who you want to be, right, that doesn't feel good at all. So to be able to have an understanding of how you like to feel, live your life, and then to organize your what's around you or in you to feel that way, yeah, that's really good. But when it comes, so here, but the shadow side of control though is needing to have, so for example, I have a client right now who, if there's any kind of discomfort for herself or her son, she immediately goes into fear or anxiety. Right. So having to have the environment controlled so her son never experiences a moment of pain or suffering, or I have to do everything within my power to know what's coming next and know what I'm going to feel. So because otherwise it's bad, right? That's where it starts to get toxic.
Okay. Right? Okay. I feel better about this because that is something I very much experienced early in my career. Like I would wake up at 3 a.m. being like, oh, okay, did I send that email to Darren? If I sent it, did I include the attachment about the thing for his team? Like part of that's also anxiety, but there was like
but what is anxiety telling you? Yeah. Right.
I couldn't do it. I physically couldn't do it. And so I was constantly burnt out, constantly on edge, like constantly having 8 million to-do lists just buzzing in my head. And a lot of that was control. Like I couldn't give any of that up And when I did too, here's the other place this shadow showed up for me. When I did, because we always want to prove what we already believe, right?
Of course.
So when I did delegate, 9 times out of 10, it went fine. One time it didn't go fine. And I'd go, see?
Exactly. No.
I got to do it all. I got to do it all.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I get that. Mm-hmm.
So that's that piece. That's that
Ooh.
piece.
Wow.
So what's really yummy, and we won't do it here in the podcast, but one of the things that you're welcome, well, you can do, and I'm happy to chat with you about it after the show if it's something that is interesting to you. But these are literal, they're voices of our soul, voices of the divine. We can talk to them. You can create a conscious connection between you and Captain and start to ask questions and be able to get insight from divinity, from your soul. And again, this is lovely information that's coming through a clear conscious connection. And it provides really lovely information. So that's so any other question before I turn the floor over to you?
No, I think that's good. I'm going to be percolating on this. You're going to get an email from me in about 2, because I'm like a process after the fact kind of gal. Like about 14 days, I'll be like, okay, Jennifer, I'm thinking about this.
So about that, Captain. So just one last piece, right? So in terms of the confidence, we get, when we get to know these parts of ourselves, like in the other places of any other personality assessment, we get to lean on that, and we get to say, yes, I'm going to honor the fact that I like to lead. I'm going to honor that fact about myself and allow it to permeate, as opposed to, oh, who am I, right? That imposter syndrome. Who am I to think about leading? So,
or make it wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I should just be happy being one of the team. It's like, yeah, but I'm not. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. We dumb ourselves down in so many ways to fit in within the community. I had a mentor that used to call that, tall poppy syndrome. Don't stand too tall, because those are the ones that get mowed down. But when we have the foundation under us to hold that knowing about ourselves, we can't get knocked down. So
love it.
All right.
Thank you.
I yield the floor.
Okay. Oh my gosh. So I did double check your results, because I know we talked before, and I was almost sure I remembered you being a sage. But I'll start with that. So you were a sage. Anything about the report? This is usually the first question I check in on, is anything that stood out to you as surprising? Anything that you're like, I don't know if I do that. And you can say no, but I'm just checking in on the surprise factor first.
Can you give me can you remind me of a couple?
Yeah. So some of the ones that sages always balk at, so this is what I want to check in on, is one of the pieces of a sage. So there's a description, but it's basically you find your confidence from teaching and mentoring. It's basically a longer version of that, but that's the essence. And one of the things about a sage is the unconscious need. So the unconscious need that often shows up for a sage is actually love and admiration. We think so often about sages as being, the things like the Hermione Grangers, the professor archetype, the goddess Athena, these very cerebral leaders in terms of like intellectual leadership. And actually the unconscious need that is usually bubbling beneath the surface, but that people don't see and sages don't often think to ask for, is love, connection, admiration, that sort of warm and fuzzy stuff. How did that land for you?
Got an hour. So, it's very interesting, because I've always known, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a teacher, right? That's always been something it's been threaded through me forever. And then I found myself saying, I'm just a teacher. And I did hand analysis is one of those things that I've done, and it introduced me to several other pieces but teacher got to be woven in, and that it feels like, yes, I can settle into that. And the love and the admiration part is a push-pull for me, because I want to know, I guess, and the way that it shows up for me is I want to know that something's landing for somebody. I don't want to share information for the sake of sharing information. That's not my cup of tea. I won't be that professor, up there rambling and, not really giving a crap whether the students are
looking, no one's like,
everybody's on their phone. Yeah, it's not, that's not me. And I really want it to land. But when that starts to get reflected back to me, that is a discomfort spot for me. I will say that. So that is a place of discomfort.
So this isn't in the report, but I should probably add it in because most sages I work with, we have to talk about this. How do you respond to praise? What do you do? Do you get weird?
No, I get weird. I do. Was that evident from what I was trying to portray here with my hands? Yeah, praise and I don't get along super well.
Yeah. So one of the pieces that I probably need to add this in because it always comes up is to practice simply saying, thank you. That's so kind. No, oh, it was nothing. No, like, oh, it just took me a second, or like, oh, you're being silly, or changing the subject, just basking. Asking and thank you. That's so kind of you to say. Thank you. That's all you get to say. No other disclaimers, explanations, downplaying, just thank you. That's so kind of you to say. So that is something to play with.
I will definitely practice with that. It's very interesting. As business owners, you're supposed to share what people, say for you and the testimonials and all of that. And it's interesting. I'm working on a project where I've gone back to some work that I haven't done for a while. And I needed some language to make sure that I was sort of on the right track with knowing who my, in marketing speak, ideal customer was. So I went back to a set of testimonials that I received a number of years ago. And I must be doing some growth in this area. So this is a good thing to know. Reading through those testimonials, I was able to take it in a different way, right? It wasn't about, oh, this is to pump up my ego. No, this is for me to understand that something's landed with somebody. That's what's important. That means that this that I put out is something that really landed enough for them to tell me the story of how it landed with them. And so I get to, and now you can tell me if I'm deflecting or not, right? But to be able to sense it and understand those words of praise in a different way, and to allow that to hit in a space that is really important for me, right? I care what people do with that information.
Yeah. And that's, by the way, when you said about the thing of like, you don't want to be standing at the front lecturing and no one's paying attention. Yeah. That is actually more a true sage sentiment than, well, I'm just putting the info out there, take it or leave it. Like that's not teaching. That's talking. Those are two very different things. Yeah. And so another piece, and I think you do a little bit of this. I mean, your whole work and business model is around this, but for other people who maybe aren't in a coaching or teaching role, being a mentor, you can be an accountant, be a sage, and be a mentor, like a true relationship where that person can come to you for advice. You can remember like, oh yeah, I do know a lot of things. And I can share that in a way that I know lands because it's maybe more a small group or a one-to-one. And that's another thing that I love to see sages do. We often, especially sages who don't have a dynamic like us, where part of our business is teaching and coaching or mentoring, right, when they are a social media manager or an accountant or a graphic designer or own a gym. There's another one, they're like, well, that's not really my thing. And it can be, you can lean into this. It doesn't have to be in your business model for you to lean into it in other ways, because it will fill you up. Right.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. It can make whatever the job title is, it can make your experience of that job much deeper and more fulfilling. Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like, oh, I know that this is something that I'm doing, I'm good at it, but how can I take it to that next level? How can I really want to open up my eyes in the morning and go, yes, I'm so excited, right? This is what I want to do today.
Yeah. And I think that's the last thing I'd say to you, and just to anyone, if they have a personality assessment they like, or they've done the archetypes one or whatever, is a really fun journaling prompt is just, how could I show up as a sage today? What could that look like? How could I show up as my ENFP? How could I show up as a challenger? How could I show up as the captain today? Just as a quick little check-in for yourself. And then again, that inner knowing, like, how does that feel in your body? Because scary doesn't not necessarily bad scary. Maybe it's like, ooh,
yeah.
like top of the mountain feeling, like, ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So just to start playing with it a little bit more. That's a really fun way to do it, to just that little check-in of how could I, if I was to show up as a sage, what would a sage do? And kind of play with it that way.
I love it, because then it makes it more real, right? It moves it from being this archetype that's on a piece of paper and into your living, breathing embodiment of that, because that's what it's all about, right? It's about this life experience and making it more joyful, and it's more fun to be in these bodies, because
oh my God, I know
sometimes it's a little bit challenging.
Yeah, human body, our greatest gift, our greatest curse. We're in it.
That's right.
We got to figure it out.
That's right. So if you had one more gem of wisdom, one more piece of information that you would like to share about people as they are learning to be more in this space of confidence, what would that be? What would you like people to know?
Do you know what? It's yes, I do. It's that top of the mountain thing I just mentioned, the scary thing, right? I want everyone listening to be very careful the stories they're making up about what's going on in their body. Because if your heart is racing and your palms are sweating and you're a little bit short of breath, guess what? That could be fear. It also could be excitement. They feel the same physiologically, like they're the same. When you're sitting in a roller coaster and you're all strapped in, safe as can be, and you're like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. That is the same feeling as when you're like, oh God, I have to go live and I think I'm going to be sick and I hate this and I don't want to do it. And those are the same in your body. You're just making up different stories about each of them. So I want you to really check in on, what are you making up about the fact that your heart is racing? Maybe it's fear. And hey, I love a bit of fear, by the way. You're standing at the mouth of a dark alley at 3 a.m. Listen to that fear. Get the hell out of there. Fear is awesome.
Right.
I love me some fear. Sometimes if it's just because you're about to go live to talk about something you're passionate about, maybe it's excitement. Yeah. Maybe we can play with it in that way. So that's what I'd say.
Beautiful. Right. And you get to tell that story in a new way. I will not use the roller coaster example, because that for me is flat out fear. I am going to tell you, my palms are literally sweating thinking about being on that roller coaster. So thank you for that.
I get that.
Point well taken. And it's a myth. I think there's a number of things that I'm going to walk away from this interview with, but it is the thing that is the strongest for me is that it is a myth that confidence feels like Zen. When I look at somebody who I think is exuding all this confidence, I'm making up a story about how they feel in their body.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Exactly right.
And so that is exactly what I'm going to take away from this interview, because, we all have really amazing things to say. We all have a lot to give to this world. And if we let just a little bit of that throw up in the back of your throat stop us, right? We're not going to be able, we're here to play with each other at that soul level. And if we don't, we miss out. Everybody misses out. And
Jennifer, I love that. Bravery for me always comes with a side serving of nausea. And I'm okay with that. I've accepted it. It's fine. It's fine.
Love it. Oh my gosh. Well, Jess, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your stories with the humor, because, we teachers get a little serious sometimes. So I appreciate the levity and the wisdom that came through with it. So thank you so much for being a part of this conversation today.
I'm so grateful for you. You'll get that email in 14 days where I've processed all my thoughts about the Captain Soul Voice, and you just be ready for that, because it's percolating already. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you.
Of course. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning into Soul Wisdom Abundance. Again, I am Jennifer Bloom, and I help people awaken and heal their soul money relationships. And it is a joy to connect with you in this way. The Soul Wisdom Abundance is here on the first and third Fridays of every month. And until we meet again, I offer each and every one of you prosperous blessings. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Soul Wisdom Abundance with Jennifer Bloom, creating wealth from spiritual health on transformationtalkradio.com. To learn more about Jennifer Bloom or listen to past shows, visit jenniferbloom.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on any of your favorite podcasting outlets. Simply search Soul Wisdom Abundance with Jennifer Bloom.